All right. This is Asia, and this is Asia's roadmap to success. I'm holding a leash because I want to keep her in the shot for a little bit of it. We just had a little bit of an incident with Gracie here, who came over when Asia had this bully stick, and Gracie wanted to try to take Asia's bully stick. And so what we want to do is we want to let the dogs see that we're interceding for their behalf. So Gracie already has a bully stick, but Gracie wants whatever she can get. She wants to get all the bully sticks, and that's a natural thing for dogs. So basically for dogs, and right now, this has been like 4 hours at this point. So we're already an hour past my normal session time. And so this could be stressful for her, just like us, if we're in stressful situations for a long period of time, it's not ideal. So I talked to the guardians about actually trying to set it up where we could have some people come over who spend a limited amount of time. And I go over one last thing, and I'm going to try to summarize the stuff we went over. But we have a little bit of a partition here. What I'd like to do is kind of have a chair or something that we can have people come over and sit over there, give them a bunch of treats. She's going to bark and react and do her thing. Everybody's going to ignore. So what's going to happen is we're going to, first of all, exercise her first, then give her about 10 minutes to recover. Then we're going to have the guests come over after she's recovered. They're going to text us ahead of time. So we're going to go over and open the door. We'd like to do it without even the door knocking or any ringing. And we're going to have the other 3 dogs gone. This is not convenient, but if we can do this a couple of times, we can start helping her develop a positive association without all the other dogs cascading in energy. So the person sits down and has a bunch of treats. And basically, she's going to bark, 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 and we're just going to, the rest of the family is going to sit down and like just read a magazine, put some headphones on, and just ignore, don't even look at her. As soon as she settles down, I want the person over there sideways to toss the treat sideways. So if the dog's going to be actually over here. And when they do this, they're just going to throw a treat, so it just lands in here. And we're not going to tell her to get it or any of those things. We're just going to simply toss it. And the dog goes and gets it, and hopefully she starts settling down faster and faster. But what we want to do is create a positive association. Guest comes over. They don't actually come into the room. They stay on that side of the partition. So that distance helps her feel a little bit more relaxed. We've exercised her first, so she doesn't have as much pent-up energy to be frustrated about. And then they just are tossing some treats. And after we get to the point, you should start seeing the elongation of the period between barks, where she's not barking quite as much. And after she finally sits or lays down, the person can pull out a bully stick, throw a bully stick over the fence, and then she gets a bully stick, and once it lays down, before they leave, I'd like her to take like about 5 or 6 treats and throw about 5 or 6 treats over the fence, and then just get up and leave the door. So if we proceed movements with a treat, that can help the dog not be quite as reactive, if that makes sense. And so we'd like to have that person come by and visit there the first time. Second time, or I guess we can alternate this. We can do that, or we can do the other. The other thing I'd like to do is kind of what we talked about in the other video above, is going for a walk together. So basically, when the person comes over, we just follow the instructions there. I'm not going to recount that because I already have a video about that. But we want to create another positive association for the dog as we go for a walk together. And then when we come back inside, we have the person hold on the leash, provided everybody feels comfortable about it and she's not reacting. If she's reacting and you guys feel uncomfortable about it, don't do it. If anybody in the room feels uncomfortable, that can tip the scales against the dog. So we want to make sure everybody's nice and relaxed and balanced. All right, so I'm going to talk about really the other stuff that we went over, because really in this case, I think we have a dog that kind of came from not the best breeder. I don't think the breeder set her up for success. She's a farm dog. If your dog's going to live inside, you want a good dog that was bred and lived inside as a puppy. So their experience at hearing the blender and the dishwasher and the TV on and all the different benign sounds that we just filter out of our brain by default because we hear them a lot that dogs have never heard and they freak out. So number one, and then the other thing is we want to make sure that we're getting the puppy, when we get the puppy, that it's not been in a really stressful situation. A lot of breeders, it sounded like this breeder had multiple litters going on at the same time. Puppies take a lot of time, and if somebody's breeding multiple dogs and within a week they have a whole nother set of 8-week-old puppies to get rid of, they're probably doing it for profit, and they're probably not spending as much time and effort with the dog. So so we have basically a dog that didn't have a lot of socialization experience, probably was a little bit stressed out to the breeder, and then also got the time of the year that the puppy came home was during the winter. And so it was nice and mild at the beginning of the winter, then we had the crappy winter, and so the dog didn't get a lot of experience or socialization during a critical period of development. And so that's created some issues and some lack of confidence as well. So on top of that, she's under exercised. She gets probably maybe she gets to run around with the other dogs. A lot of us kind of look at that as the exercise, but the practice that the dog's doing there is really probably not ideal because she's probably pushing the boundaries with the other dogs. So we have an under-exercised dog who was kind of a stressful situation and didn't have a lot of experience younger, and also didn't really have a lot of rules or structure and was able to demand attention. So this is what I call the perfect storm. Imagine how you would act if you had a job where you got paid whether you did your job or not, and you had no rules and you do whatever the heck you wanted. You probably wouldn't be a very good staff or employee. You're not motivated to do the things that we want, which is kind of, I think, her situation. So basically what we want to do is flip the leader-follower dynamic. And one of the first things I would talk to the guardians about is increasing her exercise. Now, again, we want to talk to the vet and make sure the vet signs off on this because some German Shepherds do have a tendency for hip dysplasia. The guardians are pretty confident, but it's a repetitive exercise, so we do want the vet to sign off on it. So we're going to basically go to the stairs, touch her nose with the treat while she's looking at us, throw the treat to the bottom of the stairs. When she runs down and gets it, say a funny word that means to go down the stairs and call her back up the stairs, give her another treat, and then do this with an empty stomach, and then say a different word that means go up the stairs. And up and down the stairs we do with an empty stomach the first time until she's like, you're crazy, I'm not going down there anymore. I've gotten on there too many times. Maybe say it's 60 times. Well, now we know her maximum number. We want to exercise her about 50 to 75% of that maximum number 2 to 6 times a day. Now, throwing the treats up and down the stairs should only take about 5 or 6 minutes, where to get the equivalent on a walk would be like a 45-minute to an hour walk. So we'd like to start the exercise journal that I talked to the guardians about and just start basically cataloging the amount of exercise and when the exercise happened, and then assigning each dog a letter grade at the end of the day. And then each day we play around with the elements. We get a little bit more exercise, or if it's a low grade, a whole extra, maybe instead of going up and down the stairs 3 times throughout the day, maybe we do it 4 times. So we keep on playing around with those elements until we eventually we're like, wow, that dog's behavior was an A behavior that day. Now we know what we need to do to succeed, and we can schedule it into our lifestyle. The guardians here have really intense jobs that require a lot of time and attention from them, and it's hard because they have a busy lifestyle. But if we know how much exercise the dog needs, we can kind of schedule it into our lifestyle, especially if we're doing it in these little 5 or 10 minute segments. Now, there are a couple other people in the house, and so getting them involved to help with the stairs is pretty simple. So it doesn't take a lot of effort and initiative. So you can say, hey, I need you to exercise the dog. Your choice is either to take the dog for a walk for 30 minutes or spend 5 to 7 minutes on the stairs. Knowing kids, they're going to spend the 5 or 7 minutes on the stairs, which is probably more efficient anyways. The dog also now practices listening to somebody in the house, giving them orders and acting like a leader. So that helps in a multitude of ways. We're burning off the excess energy and we're demonstrating leadership, and we're helping the dog earn those affections. So that would be number 1, is increasing the exercise. Now, dogs also like to play fetch. That's a wonderful way to burn energy. Chasing the laser, she seemed to be interested in chasing lasers. Some dogs it's not healthy to chase lasers. She seemed okay. And the last one that you can do is something called scent games, which is basically just hiding treats, or the dog's outside the room, hide some treats around, and then basically the dog has to come in and find those treats with its nose. It's very stimulating, and it also can be draining energy-wise. So that's exercise to begin with. And also, when you do have guests come over, if she is barking like she is, one of the things you can do is set her up before the person grabs their wallet, have them toss a treat, then grab their wallet. Toss 2 treats and stand up. Toss another treat as they take a step towards the bathroom. So if we proceed our movements with a positive reinforcer, after a while she's like, because what she's barking, she's saying, I didn't give you permission to jump up or to stand or to grab your wallet or whatever it is. Well, if we proceed it with a little tribute, she was like, please grab your wallet again, because that was enjoyable. I got 3 tasty meat treats. And that's the name of the game. We want a lot of positive association. Now, other things we talked about would include, next thing we talked about was rules and structure. Really, she doesn't have any rules. And if a dog doesn't have any rules, it sees you as a peer. If it sees you as a peer, then listening to you is optional. So what I like the guardians to do is start enforcing rules that have a meaning and significance for the dogs, but also so they can demonstrate that they are acting like a leader through their actions. We have a tendency to tell the dog things. For dogs, it's all about what they see us do, not what we tell them to do. So one of the rules would be not allowing the dogs on the furniture. And we have an older dog, we maybe let the older dog get away with that. And maybe the small dog, we let the small dog on the furniture, but I would make that with an invitation only. The 2 other dogs, I would have make sure that stay on the floor. And remember, if they get on the couch, we'd toss a treat on the floor. When they jump down the floor and lick it up, we'd say the word off. Then we'd grab the X mat from under the table or under the chair and put that on top. The X mats are going to be about $70, but it just will police it for you and you don't have to do it yourself. If the dog sees that they're down here and the humans are up here, they literally see a distinction in leadership, and that will help reinforce it just without you really doing much. So it really, it's almost a throwaway or giveaway. All right, another one would be when we're in the kitchen cooking, they should not be allowed in the kitchen when we're cooking. If we're at the dinner table, they shouldn't be allowed on the dinner table. The human should eat something first, and then the dog should eat afterwards. Now, we didn't have a chance to go through it, and I think she'd be reactive to me if I went through it. So if you go to my website, doggoneproblems.com, and click on dog training tips, on the right side of the box, there's right side of the page, there's a search term box. I'd like you to type in structured feeding. I have a bunch of videos I've done where I show people how to teach a dog in a structured way. So I'd like the guardians probably to feed behind this area because there's a kind of a corridor here, creates a choke point. The kitchen is just such a wide area. Now it's going to be a pain. The guardians, like I said, work really long hours, really important jobs. But if we can spend some time for a couple weeks to get the dogs eating in a structured order where they're eating one at a time, the human who's feeding them eats something first and 5 more bites. It doesn't have to be a real meal. Then we feed the oldest dog first, then the next oldest dog, then the next one, and then she gets fed last. That will help her with her behavior with the humans as well as everybody in the house because she's identifying and seeing herself in that lowest rank position. She has rank, just not as much as anybody else. And so that is a big one because eating is such an primally important activity for dogs. And so if we help her on something we repeat multiple times a day, that's going to help her reinforce a healthy leader-follower dynamic. You can't have her treat though. So now again, so I'm just kind of happen to be walking by. I don't even want her stupid. So right there, stand up and get in between and walk her away. Perfect. So she dropped it, and the other dog was like, Gracie's like, I'm gonna get me that bully stick. So beat her with a punch if she comes over here. And so she's testing to see what she can get away with her. So that puts her on the spot where she has to react. Well, if mom and dad are correcting for that, then she sees mom and dad acting as a leader, and she sees mom and dad acting as a leader. Climbing on top of you is probably not ideal as well. So yes, so that could be trying to claim me. And I think what we have with the dogs, I think all the dogs think that they're in charge, and they're all trying to correct each other. And they're all getting frustrated. And we also have an insecure dog and some under-exercise. We have a lot of things that are all contributing towards this behavior. So if these two especially are not allowed, careful right there, perfect. So if for Gracie, what she did, she kind of lowered her head a little bit, her ears went back, and she got still. That's her that's her indicator. So march towards her. She's too close. There you go. She turns sideways, stop. So beat her with a punch over here if she tries to get, there you go. So the dogs are going to try to probe and see what they can get away with. Our job is to say, I will get up 100 times in a row if I have to, but I'm going to get my way. And after a while, they will stop challenging. But as long as they think that you're going to give up early, they will keep on doing that. One of the dirty secrets I found with dog behavior is to always follow through. Now, it's not realistic because we live busy lifestyles. So spend a month or two following through for every single thing. After a while, the dog's like, red shirt man came and suddenly it all changed. Now they're just all over us for everything. Well, if you do that for a month or two, the dogs form a behavior pattern and they just get used to acquiescing to you. And the more they do that, they get in a habit of doing that. So the myelin sheath grows over, and then we have the dogs forming a behavior pattern the way that we want. So get the X mats, letter X, M-A-T-S. You get them on Amazon. It'll cost you about $70, $80, but it's going to really be a big one. All right, let me see. When the humans are eating, the dog should not be within 7 feet of the humans, whether it's at the table here or here. Somebody has a snack, one dog gets too close, the other dog's going to try to get closer too. And speaking of that, I talked to the guardians about only rewarding the first dog. So we have an older dog, and that dog has a different set of rules because it's older. But if I tell the dog to sit, whoever sits first gets the treat. After a while, the other two dogs will start sitting down quicker and quicker, and then they all kind of start approximating the same effort. Then you can give them all the same treat. But right now, we're giving all the dogs the same treat. That was great. That look was enough from you. Oh, she is watching. She's going to disagree. That's awesome. But after a while, the dogs start to see the humans acting like leaders, and that will help them stop trying to challenge each other and stop challenging the humans. Now, one of the things that Asia does is she also likes to mouth her humans. Now, one of the guardians likes to play tug-of-war with her. That's a wonderful opportunity to practice this game. So we play tug-of-war. As soon as the dog's teeth touch, we yelp and let go of the deal. And then we stop playing the game. And make sure there's at least a couple minutes of stoppage before you continue. Otherwise, the dog will just Excuse me. So see how she's staring at me. She's like, I didn't give her permission to sneeze, but luckily she didn't react because we've spent a lot of time. But basically, that's what she is. I think she thinks she's in charge of the world, but the world doesn't listen to her. Thank you if you can grab that for me. And so that stresses her out. She's like the Rodney Dangerfield of dogs. And so the more that people don't listen to her, the more that she thinks she's in charge and they're not listening, the more reactive she thinks she needs to get. And the more reactive she gets, the more dangerous it gets for the dogs and the other people. So going back to the mouthing, so you stop playing the game as soon as your teeth touch me. If I'm petting you or doing anything, anytime your teeth touch me, I'm going to yelp like a little girl. And the dog does it a second time, then I'm going to redirect. So have like an antler or a nylabone or something like that in your back pocket, and then tease her with it. Don't just hand it to her; she won't want to take it. So tap her on this side of her head, and tap her on this side of her head, and then tap her underneath, and tap her above, and eventually she's kind of going all around for it. And then there we go. Yep, you're sitting on it in a weird way. I'll let you have that. So eventually you're tapping, and she's kind of going. Then she latches onto it, and you let her pull it away from you. Then it becomes a trophy, and you redirected her into chewing something you want. Also, I'd like the Guardians to get, they had some nylobones that were flexible. I want the rigid nylabone. So I'd like you to get, go to Amazon or Chewy. They're much cheaper than going to Petco or PetSmart. But get yourself like about 6 or 8 antlers, nylobones, a real bone, get a couple water buffalo horns. So she needs to chew on things when she's stressed out. And if we give her some options, that allows her to channel her frustrations in a healthy way. And then we can have one of those in our pocket, and we pick it up and we tease the dog with it, and then give her the whatever the thing is, and redirect her attention towards, instead of mouthing us, to mouth them. She continues to mouth you, or she's not interested in the deal. Next time she mouths you, get up and leave the room and close the door behind you. That's called negative punishment. What she's saying is, I want your attention. I want you to play with me. What we're saying is, as soon as your teeth touch me, even if it's by accident, the tug of war stops, or I'm going to leave the room. And it's going to take dogs to learn through repetition, consistency, and good timing. You have 3 seconds to correct a word to the dog. So don't let her mouth you, and then you leave the room. She's like, oh, the 4th mouthing causes them to leave. First time I feel a teeth touch, even if it's accidental, we stop or we leave the room. And after a while, she'll learn to have better dexterity. We call this bite inhibition. So the dog learns, if I put my teeth on or my mouth on the people, it has the exact opposite effect of what I'm trying to accomplish. Now, we went over 2 other things called petting with a purpose and passive training that are probably the things that most of my clients kind of, I would say, push back on me, but are like, that's easy. I wanted the hard stuff. I wanted the exercises, and all you do is the easy things. We pet our dogs hundreds of times a day. And right now, the dogs are coming up and nudging and telling the humans what to do. Well, if a dog tells me what to do and I listen, then that's validating the dog is in charge of me. So what we want to do instead is, when a dog tells me what to do, is I want to give the dog a counter order. So I want it to sit. Then when it sits, I pet it under its chin whenever possible, and then say the word sit and only the word sit. So I'm telling the dog, when you tell me what to do, right there, pet that for and say crash, or whatever your word is for down.
Crash.
That's passive training. We'll talk about that in a sec. For petting with a purpose, if the dog comes and tells a human what to do, I want the human to no longer acquiesce. Instead, the human's going to give the dog a counter order. Tell it to sit. If it's already sitting, it has to come and sit over here, or it has to lay down. And when it sits, we're going to pet it under its chin and say the word sit and only the word sit, and pet it just once, and pet it as long or as little as you want. Just have at least one pet for doing a desired behavior. After a while, what will happen is the dog's going to start coming in front of you and sitting down to sit, or laying down to prepay for attention. When it does, make sure you do recognize it. Otherwise, the dog will go back to jumping or nudging you or doing the other things. But now, we're telling the dog, if the human tells you what to do and you do it, you get a reward, you get a benefit. And there's more of a motivation for the dog to want to do that. The more the dog sits and prepays for attention, sitting is a more subordinate position for dogs. And the dog's practicing listening to us, it's also earning that affection. So it really... Yeah, good job. And that's great recognition. So one person saw it, the other person didn't. Help each other out like that. So the more that we pet our dogs with desired behaviors, the more that we'll start offering those. And we also can boost the dog's self-esteem. And the more confident a dog is, the less reactive typically they are. So, and also remember to use the word paycheck. So if I come in the room and see someone's petting the dog's standing up, we say paycheck, that person has to stop petting, tells the dog to sit, then we pet it on her chin, say sit or down or whatever the word is for whatever the action, and then we can explain to the other person, I did it right the first time, you missed it, but thanks for checking on me and making sure. Remember, it's a positive thing, it's not, gotcha, you forgot to do it. Now, passive training is just what she did right there, is waiting for the dog to voluntarily offer you the behavior. Every time the dog goes to the dog bed, come up with a funny word for the dog bed. Call it beach or Jamaica, whatever you want to call it. So every time the dog goes to the dog bed, you say Jamaica and give it a pet or give it a treat. After a while, it's like, man, every time I come over here, something good happens. I like this. Every time I sit, they're petting me and I hear the word sit. Every time I come to them, I hear the word come and they petting me. Every time I lay down, they pet me and say crash. Every time I take my first bite of food, I hear the word spaghetti over and over again. So I would, for the dogs, when you're feeding them, use passive training for that. For the first 2 months, each dog has its own unique command word. Let's say her word is steak. So every time she takes her first bite of food, we say the word steak. And after a while, she hears steak, there's food in her mouth. Steak means I eat. The other 3 dogs hear steak, there's no food in their mouth. Doesn't make them think the same thing. And so in adding structure to mealtime, that's going to be a real big one. I know it's going to be a pain, but it'll only take you about a week or 2, and then they'll be pretty much on autopilot. You just have to do a little tiny bit of maintenance, and they'll be doing it for you. So for passive training, anytime they bring you a specific toy, name each individual toy. Now, all bones can be bones, all balls can be balls. But the individual ones, call this one has a name. His name is Blue. And so I don't know where they got that name from because he's Aqua. But just kidding. Mm-hmm. But you want to come up with these funny command words. And so, one other thing I forgot to go over with the Guardians is how to teach the dog to leave the room. It's real easy. You touch the dog's nose with a treat and throw it 3 feet outside of the doorway or the boundary. So the dog runs out in the, so we're in the kitchen, we throw the treat 3 feet in the living room, and then when the dog goes and gets it, we say the word out. So now we're putting in context leaving, which is actually can be a punishment for dogs to be excluded from the group. So leaving is a rewardable thing. It's not I didn't do anything wrong. I'm actually about to get a reward. So we throw that out of the kitchen and then tell the dog to out. We would do this when we're not cooking food in the kitchen, when we're not eating at the table, we're not in the dining room, whatever. So we just go around and we practice this in the easiest version possible. And that's something I'm glad I remember, because really what I do as a dog behaviorist, when a dog is naughty or fails a behavior, I ask the client, have we taught the dog how it's expected to behave during that situation? And 99.9% of the time, the answer is no. We just expect the dog to do it. So one of the things I know gets excited for the leash, correct? So most dogs do, and that's an example of classical conditioning. The leash gets picked up and is always followed by a walk. And I like the walk, so I start getting more and more revved up. Well, excited is not necessarily happy when it comes to dogs, which is when you guys come home or anytime the dogs are excited, you should ignore them and don't pet them, don't give them any attention, don't tell them what to do, just ignore them completely. And as soon as they settle down, you can start reaching for the dog, as soon as it starts wiggling, pull your arm back. It'll be several times you have to go like this, back and forth, stopping. But if you stop with precision, the dog will eventually learn getting excited stops the attention from coming my way, and I like the attention, so I'm going to sit here calmly, and then I'll get attention lavished upon me. Now, getting back to what I do, and I'll give you an example with a leash, because that's an opportunity to practice, helping the dog practice calming itself down. So we think of leashing the dog up as one process. We just grab the leash, we attach it, we go for a walk. It's actually a whole bunch of little steps. And again, this is what I want you to do when your dog fails, is recreate the situation. So if we're taking the dog for a walk, we're like, okay, it's 3:10. Holy crap, I was supposed to be out of here 2 hours ago. But whatever it is, we're on the clock, and then when the dog doesn't cooperate, we get frustrated with the dog. So practice this exercise when you have no intention of taking the dog for a walk. So you take all the frustration out of your situation. So get up and walk to where the leashes are. Don't tell the dogs we're going to go for a walk. A lot of people do that, and they've got the dog crazy. So just start walking where the leash is. The first stage is the dog needs to stay behind me. As soon as the dog walks in front of me, instead of correcting the dog, I just gently stop the process. So I'm walking where the leash is, the dog walks in front of me, I turn around and I go sit back on the couch. No, you can't come closer because she's got the treat, or she's got a bully stick. There we go. See, he burned the energy to follow through. So that tells the dog he's serious about it. So the first stage is walking to where the leash is, and as soon as the dog walks in front of you, turn around and walk away. And you go back and forth, you'll go. And eventually you'll get to the point where the dog realizes, oh, as soon as I move in front, that they stop taking me for a walk, I'll just stay behind them. And that's the follower position. So the next stage is when we get all the way to where the leash is and the dog's staying behind me. When I get to where the leash is, I tell the dog to sit. This is another thing that I expect through this process, is for you to sit down. So I say sit. If the dog sits within 3 seconds, then I would start reaching for the leash. If the dog did not sit within 3 seconds, I would sit back down, and the whole process starts over again. And this is an illustration of why rules are important for the other dogs, because Gracie here is just barking because she wants to go outside or she wants some attention. And it's called demand barking. And so the more we pet her with a purpose, the less she'll do that, because she starts to think, I will sit to ask for my attention. Right there, you can pet for her and say, come. You could have petted for come for there, because you didn't come to you.
Gotcha.
I know that she was demanding attention, but you had at least 3 seconds.
Okay.
If your dog's demand barking, you want at least 3 seconds before you give them a different order, or they do offer you a different behavior and your reward for that. So the next stage for the leashing process, first stage is just walking towards the leash is. Second stage is we tell the dog to sit. If it sits, then we start reaching for the handle. As soon as we start reaching, the dog wiggles and gets up, we stop the process. Tell it to sit again. And if it sits, we continue. If it doesn't sit, we go back to the couch. It'll go back and forth, but eventually the dog will stay seated the whole process of reaching for the leash and attaching to the collar. And if it doesn't, the consequence is the whole process stops. And you're not frustrated about this because you're not even planning on taking the dog for a walk. We're just practicing the leashing up. Some people think this is mean, but what this is desensitizing and helping the dog understand that just because the leash gets picked up doesn't mean we're guaranteed going for a walk. So it actually helps them. If some of my clients that dogs get too excited for a walk, I tell them that they basically need to leash their dog up 4 or 5 times for every 1 time it actually does go on a walk. Now, since she's so reactive on walks, the guardians don't walk her. I would recommend the guardians look for times of the day when there's not going to be anybody in your neighborhood and trying to walk her. It doesn't have to be an hour walk. Even if we just walk her to the end of the block and back, and she doesn't have to see anybody to lurch at, she's practicing walking without protecting and lurching. Even though there's no reason for her to do it, that helps her practice that behavior. So for the leashing process, again, you're going to break it down. The first step is you have to walk behind me. Second stage is you have to sit calmly while I pick up the leash. Third stage is you have to stay seated while I attach it. Then we walk to the door and we tell the dog to sit again. If it doesn't sit within 3 seconds, I drop the leash and I go sit back down, or I detach the leash and the whole process starts over again. And if we do this again at times we're not going for a walk, we don't really care. The dog's like, after a while, it's like, oh man, I remember we used to go, every time you pick up the leash, we go for a walk. Now it's only 1 out of every 6 times. I'm boring. This is boring. Yes, that's the whole point. This is the energy we want our dog to have right before a walk, nice and calm and relaxed. And remember, before walking, exercising your dog before a walk, giving it 10 minutes to recover, can set your dog up for success as well. Before we have guests come over, again, we're in exercise before the guests, or before we do the bat training, or the fence sitting deal. Also, I wanted the guardians to teach her some new tricks and commands. One of them, I want them to teach her how to catch. And to do that, don't do 3 warm-ups, just do 1 throw and try to make it such a good throw. All the dog is to open its mouth and the treat goes in. If it does go in, we say the word catch. If it hits the nose and falls down, somebody sitting next to the dog picks it up and gives it back to the thrower. This motivates the dog to snatch it out of the air, helps them develop eye-mouth coordination, which always cracks me up when I say that, but it is actually a thing for dogs. But it also gives the guest the ability and people that you meet on walks to interact with your dog at a distance. So eventually, once your dog's good at this, you have people over on the other side, and just people in the family. On the other side of the fence, we help the dog practice the behavior in the easiest version possible. So we're on the, family members on the other side of the fence. We tell her to sit. She sits. We throw a treat. She catches it. Eventually, you can have guests come in, and the guests practice that. And they're throwing the treat, and she gets to move away as if she wants to, or she can catch the treat. After a while, she'll start moving closer and closer to the fence because she likes getting those treats. And the more this happens, the more she has a positive association with people. All right, so getting back to petting with a purpose, passive training. Petting with a purpose is if the dog is initiating contact or giving us an order, we give it a counter order. Tell it a desired behavior. I would not practice shake, but sit or lay down. And then when it does, we pet our chin and say just that command word. Passive training is waiting for the dog to voluntarily offer the behavior on its own and recognizing and rewarding it within 3 seconds. Come up with a watchword for that as well. I used to say recognize, but I had a client who went to a Baptist church and they go, we go up and we testify, praise the Lord. So now I say testify, that means you're missing an opportunity to recognize or reward the dog for desired actions or behaviors. I asked the guardians earlier what she could do to make them happy, and they gave me a list of things they didn't want her to do. Well, now if we start petting her with a purpose and passively training her, she's going to say, well, I like it when I come, when I sit, when I drop my ball, when I bring them the blued thing, all the rest of this. Now the dog starts offering these desired actions and behaviors as opposed to things we don't like. Now, I'd also like the guardians to teach her some new tricks or commands. Now, we can come out and teach you that, but we're pretty expensive. What I would recommend the guardians do is go to YouTube. All these dog trainers want to get a TV show. So let's show you how to do all their tricks on YouTube for free. So we have multiple people in the house. What we'd like to do is have each person in the house on Sunday or Saturday or Monday or whatever the day of the week it is, teach the dog a new trick. They should take one dog into a room by themselves and just teach each dog separately. It's faster. Mathematically, it's been proven that it's a lot faster to try to do it all at the same time. So then all week long, if we teach her to roll over, then all week long, you want to go out the door, roll over. You want to eat, roll over. You want to pet you, roll over. By the end of the week, you look at the dog, it's just rolling over. And so now we teach all the dogs this command. We have different ways to redirect the dog's attention. We boost the dog's self-esteem and confidence because it's learning a trick or skill. And the dog deepens its respect for us because we're the humans that are associated with the dog learning that new trick or skill. So I'd recommend that whoever is participating in this, we have a rotation. So one week you do it, next week you do it, next week one of the kids does it, next week the next kid does it, then you come back. So if each one of you teaches the dog like 3 or 4 commands, at the end of like 3 or 4 months, your dog will know 10 or more commands. How many commands does she know?
I don't know, 4, 5. She knows sit, she knows down.
There's a lot of studies that show that when a dog knows 10 or more commands, they achieve a certain level of confidence that really is beneficial. So we'd like her to get up there, and you can teach her, it can be just doing a circle. They can be fun, but try to look for some, things that are, not to say job, but more productive. Not necessarily just tricks, but commands as well. And so the dog will have a little bit more respect, just like I have more respect for my mentor. And hopefully the people that my proteges are respectful of me because I help them part of their life journey. And so the dog learns to see us acting like leaders through enforcing rules, through petting with a purpose and passive training, adding structure, and they're associated with me learning new things. That helps the dog's confidence level, and it helps them feel more respect for us. And really what we need to do is demote her and the other dogs in the house. They understand that they're no longer in charge of security. The humans have that handled just fine, thank you very much. We want you to be a companion. So we want you to go to your dog bed, and so we're going to reward you for doing that. We're going to pet you for coming, like one of the guardians just did off camera. Another rule that I forgot, make sure you make them sit before you let them through the door to the house, the back door, the yard at first, but eventually every door in the house. Also, what is she like when she's in the kennel and you're about to let her out? Is she like a little tornado?
Yeah.
So waiting for her to calm down before you let her out. So if you go to my website and search for kennel training, what we do is we go to the door and the dog's all excited, we just wait. And when the dog kind of settles down, we reach down and we open the door and we open it up and we step our feet blocking exiting the door. And we just stand there waiting. And the dog will try to push its way through, just keep it there, just stay there. As soon as the dog kind of settles down, we kind of take a small step backwards and just make it about this far. And as soon as you step backwards, the dog's going to try to come. Right now, one of the dogs on the couch. So I would say if the dog's on the couch and starts whimpering like that, it would have to get off of the couch. We're not going to do it right now, but that would be just I like to see as things come up. So for the door, we open the door and we step in front of it real quick to block the exit of the door with our legs. Now we're waiting for the dog. As soon as the dog sits down or settles down, we take that small step backwards. We pause. You're going to need to be quiet for this. I know you want that bully stick, but you can't have it. So we wait for the dog to stop trying to come forward. If it tries to come out forward, we take a step backwards. We take a step right back towards the kennel to block the dog from being able to exit. And we keep on doing this back and forth. Sorry, I was holding her. Until eventually, when we take the step back, the dog stays put. Now we stay about this far away from the kennel, and then we wait. And as soon as she sits down, then we take a knee and ask her to come out. She's not going to sit while she's all crazy. So what we're doing is we're saying, look, I'm only going to open the door when you're somewhat calm. And then I'm going to when you get calmer, I take a step backwards. And then I wait for you to sit. When a dog sits voluntarily, do not tell it to sit. It's saying I'm challenging you less. So I want to say, as soon as you stop challenging me, you get a reward. And I invite you out. Eventually, we make the dog lay down before we let it out. But now what we're doing, if we just open the door and the dog is a little tornado, we're going to have the Tasmanian devil rotating through our house. Well, if we help them, that's a wonderful opportunity to help the dog practice calming itself down. And the kennel gives you the advantage because the dog can't run around and get beyond you. Same sort of thing for the door. I go to the door and I say, sit. The dog doesn't sit within 3 seconds. I walk away, sit down near the door. So the dog's looking through the door and say, oh man, he's having a great time in there. I wish I was hanging out with Mike. Be like Mike. But then eventually after 1 minute, we go give the dog another opportunity to do it right the first time, but only say it once. And I'd like the family to adopt the watchword of repeat or rerun. So I've watched a couple of opportunities where the guardians were saying the command word over and over and over again. Well, that just waters down your authority. It proves that you're not an authority figure. Well, for the door, I go to the door and I say, sit. If you sit, you get rewarded. If you don't comply, I don't punish you and I get upset. I don't want you to come in. I don't really care. I sit down and I'm having a great time at the table. And after 1 minute, I give you another opportunity. You don't do it then, I walk away for 2 minutes, then for 4 minutes, then for 8 minutes. So eventually, the dog realizes he's not out anything. I'm the one who's missing out because I didn't sit. And the next time they come up to the door and say sit, the dog sits down and you fly that door open. Or if we have 4 dogs doing it, one of the dogs sits, I let that dog in and do my best to not let the other 3 dogs in. And eventually, the dogs learn to come in and out. And another trick that you can teach the dogs to do is to go in or out the door with a separate command word for each dog. And I'll show you how to do that one right now. It's real simple. With one of the dogs and the other dogs away, go to the door, touch the dog's nose with the treat, tell it to sit first, then touch its nose with the treat, and open the door and throw the treat out. When it goes outside, come up with a word that means that dog goes outside. So in this case, I'm going to say, let's just say vacation for Asia. And then I would say a different word that means to come in the house. And again, I would have a separate word for each dog. So that way, when you're doing this, eventually you get to the point where you open the door and they know they can't come in without permission. And then let's say Asia's dog Asia's word to go outside is vacation. So the other 3, all 4 dogs are outside. I open the door. I say vacation. Asia runs through because she ran through and got a treat. So that word vacation means that I get to go outside. The other 3 dogs didn't hear it. So it doesn't mean anything to them. So if you come up with a unique word for each dog to go in, each dog to go out, come out, that's one of those things you could teach them to practice going in and out. Have the other dogs in the basement or somewhere else are not chirping. And then basically you just rep. So I'd get like 10 treats and tear them all in half. Throw half the treat outside and say vacation. And then when the dog comes back in, say holiday. And come up with a unique word for each dog. And just put a little post-it note on the door so you know which one it is. After a while, you'll be able to open the door and they all stay there waiting, developing or practicing self-control, waiting for you to give each individual dog permission to come in. And I would invite them in based on who's behaving the best. If Asia's there whimpering and whining and wiggling and Gracie's doing a better job, I might let Grace in. Remember, for dogs, whoever's in front or first is the leader. So I want to give the leader position to the dog that is displaying the behavior that I want the most. Now, I also showed the Guardian a focus exercise. It didn't work all that well right here because I think she was stressed out because we were here. Go to my website again, Dog Training Tips. Click on the right side, or the right side of the box. There's a page. There's a box that says focus and a practice focus exercise. I would do it with all dogs. You're gonna have to get down. Mom wants you down. And so after a while, this won't be so much of a challenge because all the dogs will just know not to do it. Now, climbing on top of someone can be, it's not disrespectful, but it is a lack of respect. And so there's nothing wrong with the dog being here if I invite her up, but I did not invite her up. Now, if I push her away, see how she's pushing against me? That's called the opposition reflex. So what I want to do is lure her with a treat or something like that so she gets down on her own. It's very natural for us to shove a dog, but what we mean is go away, and the dog means, oh, you want me to come back and push you harder. So we want to use a treat or something like that to motivate the dog to want to go out. I'm trying to think, is there anything else we want to go over?
We got to have lots of treat packs.
You're going to go through a lot of treats, and that's fine because she is still a puppy. Remember that Asia is only 6 months old, so you have 3 more months to adjust her personality. At 9 months old, they kind of get locked into the personality. So make a list of all the things that she's reactive to or fearful of, and try to create a positive association in the easiest version possible so she gets to practice doing that. All right, well, this is Asia. And can we see Asia in the shot? And Gracie just jumped on the couch, but the Guardians are going to fix that later on. I'm David, and this is the roadmap to success. Remember, everything you do trains your dog. Only sometimes you mean it.